Our first talk is by Amit Parno Moslami from the University of KwaZulu-Natal here in South Africa.
Thank you, and first of all I would like to thank the organizers, especially Peter, Alvaro and everybody for inviting me here. It's always good to visit Cape Town under some pretext or the other, and especially this time from a cold Durban to a warm Cape Town. So I'll be speaking about Book-Dall-Bondi limit in modified gravity, and so basically I'll be talking about this paper which came out last year with my colleagues Sunil Maharaj and Anne-Marie, who is here. So fortunately, in the talks before, both Team and Pierre introduced modified gravity and what's the need for modified gravity, so I won't spend much time on that. So in a nutshell, the thing is like this, that GR is still the most beautiful and successful theory of gravity so far. But it turns out that there are dark things lurking around us, and to have a geometrical interpretation of all of these, people have tried different ways, and modifying the theory of gravity is one of them. And there are different modified gravity, and one that naturally provide a lake-time acceleration without any need for any dark matter fluid is FFR gravity, and a lot of people here in Cape Town are working on that. And so I'll be focusing on FFR gravity in this talk. So what's FFR gravity in a very compact way? So the action contains an arbitrary but well-defined function of the Ricci scalar R. And these higher order curvature terms admit a phase of accelerated expansion, and that's the interesting part, both in late times and in early times. So both the late time acceleration and the inflation can be combined together in the same theory, so that's what makes it a bit more interesting. And another thing is like the other modified theories of gravity has a lot of instabilities which in principle can be eliminated from this FFR gravity, and that's what makes it interesting. So now when you write down the field equations, I find it's always easy to write down the field equation in this form, so that you have the Einstein tensor GAB on the left hand side and you put all the garbage due to the FFR term in the right hand side, and you get the field equations like this, where the garbage of curvature terms comes into this equation. Now from this term you can easily see that this theory is fourth order theory, because Ricci scalar is second order in the metric coefficients, and you have two more derivative operators before that, so that makes it a fourth order theory, and it's very, very, very hard to solve and get exact solutions like those in GR. Even in the case of cosmology, as many of my colleagues here would know, where immediately you put the most beautiful symmetries you can think of, homogeneity, isotropy, etc., etc., and in principle you have to only solve for one metric functions, the scale factor, which depends on only one variable time, it's still quite difficult. So if it's difficult in cosmological scenario, you can imagine how hard it will be while studying astrophysics of stars and black hole. I'm just giving you an overview. So to study astrophysics, what you need to do is you have to solve the field equation in the interior of the star with the matter. You have to solve the field equation outside. Now, as Pierre pointed out that the Gauss's theorem doesn't work in modified gravity, similarly the Birkhoff's theorem in its original form doesn't work in modified gravity. You have to modify the Birkhoff theorem. So definitely Schwarzschild is not the only solution here. So you have to find an exterior solution which is either Schwarzschild or very near Schwarzschild, because the solar system test gives a very strong constraint here. You have to solve the field equations in the interior of the star, and that's not the end of the story. You have to match these two solutions at the surface of the star. And the matching conditions too is a bit problematic. The first two ones are the usual matching conditions in GR, which is matching the first and second fundamental form. They're called Israel-Darmois condition. And because of the higher order curvature terms, you have two more extra conditions, that the Ricci scalar and the normal derivative of the Ricci scalar has to be matched at the problem. So you can take it from me that apart from very, very, very special and not interesting cases, exact analytic solution is just not possible. And even if you want to solve this whole thing numerically, it's a beast. So when confronted by a problem like this, the first question a lazy bone like me would ask is that, of course, I won't take the pain to solve this equation, it's too much of a work. If I just sit on the couch and look at the equations, just by looking at it, can I say something worthwhile about the system? So it turns out that people who were not at all lazy bones and order of magnitude more intelligent than me actually thought of this much before. So people like Chandrasekhar, Bondi and Bugdal and these people, they actually asked the same question in GR. And it's very interesting, the differentiable properties and regularity conditions for Einstein field equation gave some very interesting and generic limits on the behavior of the stars. And Bugdal-Bondi limit is one of them. And it's very interesting, if you go to the wiki page of Bugdal, he was one of the earliest advocates of FOFR gravity. Quite interesting in that case. So, what is Bugdal-Bondi limit? Now it's very simple. Take a spherical, static, perfect fluid star with a Schwarzschild exterior. So it's absolutely fine. And let that star be thermodynamically stable. By that I mean that the mean density decreases from the center to the surface, which is very physical. You take any stars, the core density is more and the surface density is less. In that case, 2m by rs, where rs is the radius of the star, is less than 8 by 9. And this is true for any equation of state, any scenarios you can think of. If the first 2 points are satisfied, then the third one is true. Now what does it mean? Let's look at it a bit more carefully. So this is 2m by r, this is vacuum, this is the black hole with the static limit 2m by r equals 1. So Bugdal-Bondi limit says that this 2m by r of any stable star must be less than this. Now of course, given a radius, there is a limit of how much mass you can put into it, and I mean the common sense says of course there is a limit. The limit is 2m by r, and if you exceed that, it will be trapped and it will collapse into a black hole. But the interesting point is it's not 2m by r, the limit lies somewhere much before 2m by r. And look at this very carefully, this red region has no problem whatsoever. There is no singularity, no trapping, nothing. But still, the 2m by r cannot cross and go into this forbidden region of the Hogwarts castle. So it's absolutely a no-no thing in GR. Well, what does it experimentally, observationally mean? Of course, mass is not a very directly observable quantity. But if you think of the surface redshift, gravitational redshift of a star, which is defined like this, then you can immediately see that the surface gravitational redshift of any compact star cannot be greater than 2. And this thing is measurable because in any neutron star, the radiation from the surface is basically a black body radiation, which you can measure, and you can subtract out the cosmological redshift and find the surface redshift of the star. And it has to be less than 2 if GR is the true theory of gravity. So this is the Boole-Bondi limit in GR. Now the question is that if I alter the theory of gravity, is it possible to have more massive but stable compact stars in f of r theory of gravity? In other words, can the mass to radius ratio of a compact star in the lying in the forbidden region in GR, thus making the surface redshift of the star larger than 2, then it has a direct observational significance and one can test GR or otherwise observationally. So let's look at this question a little clearly. So let this be the metric inside the star, and as I said that the energy momentum tensor can now be written in 2 parts. This is the usual matter contributions, mu, p, because it's I'm considering it as a perfect fluid, and these are the curvature contributions that lies here. So once you have the metric and the energy momentum tensor, of course you can write down the field equations. The first equation is the G0 equation, and from here you get the m of r, which is the mass of the star. This m of r is, by the way, the Misner-Sharp mass, and this is exactly the mass of the star you see from infinity, and it's the integral from 0 to rs. And as you know, this mu has now 2 contributions, one from the real matter and one from the curvature. So the actual mass which you are seeing from infinity is not only about the matter contribution, it has the curvature contribution too. So this is the G11 equation, and this is the conservation equation, which is a part of Einstein's field equation. And of course, if you write the p theta and pr, that is the tangential and radial components of the curvature part, it looks like this. So you can see the equations does not at all look very nice and tempting to solve too. So I am not going to solve this equation. So now, just by playing with the first 3 equations, you can actually come down to a nice equation which looks like this. And this equation is actually used to study Boole-Bondi limit for anisotropic stars for a long time in history. So one may think that, okay, so the stars in f of r gravity actually behaves like anisotropic stars, which is not strictly true, because this p theta minus pr, as you can see from the earlier slide, actually depends on the Ricci scalar, which in turn depends on the metric coefficient. So there is a feedback loop working here, and that's exactly where the 4th order nature of the gravity comes in. So it's not so easy thing to do. So when you plug in that p theta minus pr, the curvature contribution, you come down to a master equation which looks very nice, because you can immediately see this c is basically the G0 component, which is the gravitational potential, and you can see that f prime and the gravitational potential plays a very symmetric role in determining the gradient of the average density of the star. For example, in GR the second term vanishes altogether, it's only the first term that stays. But in f of r both the terms stays, and you see it's very symmetrically these the gravitational potential c and the f prime, they are present in determining the gradient of the average density. So this will now be the master equation which I'll use to find out what the limit should be. Now what's my system? Let's define my system very properly. I told you that Birkhoff theorem doesn't work in f of r in its original form, but fortunately some of my colleagues like Nzioki, Peter, Sante and myself found out alternative, which is Birkhoff-like theorem in f of r, which states that if the function f obeys certain conditions, then Schwarzschild is a solution to the system. So if Schwarzschild is a solution, I will just take it as a Schwarzschild exterior. The interior is obviously the same as before, and since it's a Schwarzschild exterior now, the matching conditions looks like this. These first two are the usual Israel-Darmois matching conditions, and third and fourth are the extra conditions that comes from f of r gravity. So now let's see what are the different conditions and constraints for different functions. So now in any f of r gravity, it's well known that the first two are always imposed. They are no ghosts and no tachyon condition. So these are very generic one. And third and fourth are exactly the conditions for a Schwarzschild solution to exist. That the function f should be of class C3 with f0 equals 0 and f prime 0 not equals 0. And in that case, Schwarzschild solution is the only solution with the vanishing Ricci scalar. So that's the modification of Birkhoff theorem in f of r gravity. So these are the conditions on the functions f. Now as I said, the matching conditions becomes like this. This is the matching of the first fundamental form. This is the second fundamental form, that whatever has to be matched with Schwarzschild, the pressure has to be 0 at the boundary, which turns out to be this if you plug in the field equations, and the Ricci scalar and the derivative of the Ricci scalar both should vanish at the boundary. Okay. Now the third condition is definitely the regularity conditions. I want all my metric functions to be regular everywhere inside the star. I don't want any singularities. Which means the functions has to be smooth. That means if they're smooth and at least C2, then twice differentiable, then the radial derivative of all the metric functions and thermodynamic functions should vanish at the center. Because if they don't, there will be a kink at the center and the center won't be smooth. And also near the center, of course, it's quite obvious that the mass function should go as R cubed. Otherwise, there is a singularity lurking at the center. So these are the regularity conditions, and okay. Now these are the important things, the thermodynamic conditions. The first one is C prime, as C, remember, is the G naught naught term, which is the gravitational potential. So C prime greater than 0 means the gravitational greater than or equal to 0 implies that the gravitational potential should not have any local extrema, and the extrema should only be at the center. So that's the first thermodynamic stability condition. The second is, of course, the average density should decrease from the center of the star, which is very much physical condition. And the third is, the third, what I impose is the Ricci scalar inside the star has to be always less than, greater than 0. Why? Because if it's not, say for example in the Starobinsky model, R plus alpha R square model, there might be some value of Ricci scalar where f prime r goes to 0, and that's a singularity. Just to avoid those kind of singularities, we have to make Ricci scalar greater than 0, and as the Ricci scalar at the boundary vanishes exactly, so I will impose the condition that it's monotonic. It starts from the center and monotonically decreases to 0. So these are the thermodynamic conditions. So if we just plug all these conditions into this master equation and just play around with it, do some manipulations, do some integral by parts once or twice, you can prove this beautiful theorem absolutely without any problem. And it states that the regularity and thermodynamic stability conditions on a spherically symmetric and static star of radius Rs immersed in a Schwarzschild vacuum in f of r gravity impose an upper bound of the total effective mass of the star, just like GR. But the important point is, this upper bound now lies between the Boogdahl-Bondi bound for GR and the static limit to n equals Rs. So that means you can actually calculate this bound. Let U be f prime of R naught, where R naught is the Ricci scalar at the center of the star, divided by f prime of 0. And since f prime and f double prime are both greater than 0, it obviously implies that U is greater than or equal to 1. Then the limit can be exactly calculated like this. Now you can easily see that if U is equal to 1, it's exactly the GR limit, 8 by 9. And if U goes to infinity, the static then this limit approaches the static limit to n equals Rs. So in other words, with this modification of theory of gravity, we can actually in principle go into this so-called forbidden region, which was exactly forbidden in GR. And hence, this gives a very good observational test astrophysically. See, you can always modify a theory to get cosmological viable solutions, whatever you like. But any modification in theory of gravity has to be true for astrophysical scales also. And this is one of the great ways to check whether GR is the theory. Because in astrophysical scales, near the compact star, it's a very, very, very strong gravity regime. So, and we still don't have any proof of GR in a very high, strong gravity regime. All the proofs of GR are generally in the PN, PPNs, but near very strong gravity regime, near the black hole candidate, it's still, there are no strong observational constraints on GR as such. So this might impose such constraints, and one can in principle check whether it's true or not. So to conclude that what we did was we just generalized the so-called Boogdahl-Bondi bound of static stars in GR to those in f of r gravity. And what we saw that in principle we can have extra massive stars in f of r gravity which are forbidden in GR. So in a way, this might give one clue on the dark matter problem. So suppose we have extra massive compact stars spread around in a galaxy, which was not possible in GR. Then it can actually in principle account for some percentage of that dark matters in the galaxy. That's the first one, and secondly, this surface redshift of this star can in principle now be greater than 2, gives a very novel scenario observationally to verify the validity or otherwise of GR in high curvature regime. So I think I'll stop here.
Thanks, Victor. Is there any question?
So using Schwarzschild as the exterior geometry for this matching, and
this matching, yeah.
When you're proving the theorem.
Yeah.
But I suppose that there are other, as you said,
there are other solutions too. Yeah.
Do you think it's conceivable that you could try and prove something similar for those other geometries, or would it be?
It is possible. It is definitely possible, but that will change the final result of the limit. But it's definitely possible.
So I suppose you could have Euclid-like potentials as
Yes,
well,
yes,
and time
yes.
dependency.
Yeah. It's definitely possible. In fact, both of your solutions are possible, but I mean, what you found out for r to the power delta gravity, in principle, it's possible. But it will give a different bound, different bound. But what's interesting is actually you can go into the forbidden region of the GR. This is the possibility.
It's a very, very basic question. So, what is the physical origin of these BB limits in GR?
Well, it's just the structure of field equations. See, the way I proved it for the f of r, the GR proofs goes just parallel to this.
But that's why I'm a bit confused, because so it seems to be purely gravitational.
Yes.
Right. And so the fact that we can always construct. How to say that? So you mean that if I try to construct a star model with GR,
yes,
I cannot find any, for example, equation of state so that I have a star which is bigger than these eight
no, you cannot. that's the interesting part. You cannot.
Yeah, it's unstable.
It will be unstable. Yeah.
It will be unstable. Okay.
So
it's instability.
you have to make the star where the average density goes down from the core to the surface.
Okay. Okay. Now I see. Now I see.
So if you impose that condition, then you cannot get a star, which is.
Any more questions?
Just one quick question. So your matching condition. So when you have the R is 4-fold, right?
Yeah.
Do you have an extra matching condition for the R prime line? The single derivative because you have
So no, you have two extra matching. One is R should match, the Ricci scalar should match across the boundary, and the normal derivative of the Ricci scalar should match. It goes on the same footing as if you put an extra scalar field. The scalar field should match and the normal derivative of the scalar field should match across the boundary. So those two are the extra conditions.
So there's no need to impose some condition for the R prime line?
No, there's no need to. Because the field equation itself contains R prime. So it's just like electrodynamics where you match the potential and the derivative of the potential, that's all. And the double derivative is given by the field equation, so you don't have to match that.
Well, if I remember well, there is a special case of it when you have f of r equal r squared.
Yeah, then it's
4 junction condition.
yeah.
But that violates the Birkhoff theorem.
That violates the Birkhoff theorem.
Because for that f prime of r would be 0 would be 0.
F prime, yeah.
So it doesn't apply.
Could you briefly mention, and maybe some people with more astrophysical background can help, how to measure or which efforts have been made in this surface redshift, right? Because that's going to be the
Yes, you see.
how to measure it.
Okay, so first thing is for a highly compact star which is not a black hole. So what are the radiations from the star? For example, the accretion in the neutron star, the matter actually falls on the hard surface. And so the radiation is actually black white. And so you can actually see that radiation, and if you subtract the cosmological redshift, what remains is the gravitational redshift. So from there you can guess what is the gravitational redshift. And if GR is the true theory of gravity, then it always has to be less than 2.
And how they measure that?
Sorry, that's clearly not a static situation though. I mean, if the star is accreting, the star is probably...
Oh, if it's rotating, yeah.
So
All those effects can be taken, but it doesn't change. In fact, even if you take the anisotropic star, it changes the limit a little bit, but still there is a limit which is less than the 12 by r. People have worked out. In the different cases, people have worked out.
So the stars and tables giving associating surface rates.
Yes, yes.